first off, thank you again for coming on my How to Get Away with Murder podcast, and I really appreciate it. And I don't think you need any introduction, but I think everyone will know
Oh,
this
there'll be
face.
somebody who's like, who the hell is that guy?
No, they better. I kind of like to start with like growing up and how you got into acting and some of your inspirations, like personally, or maybe someone you saw in the
Hmm.
movies or a TV show or
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I grew up born and raised in Philadelphia, where the show takes place. I was kind of the
yeah.
amateur advisor, I think,
Where-
for all things Philadelphia at the beginning. But no, I think looking back now, I think I always loved movies. I didn't think that there could be a career in it or in television or film because there was nobody in my area that did that. And I went to a very big high school, and it was very competitive. And there were plays, but it was a different crowd, and I just wasn't in with that crowd. And it's just I had kind of an interest in it, but I didn't pursue it, and I kind of have regrets about not doing it at that point. And then when it came time, I went to college. I just figured everyone's going to college, and I selected a state college, a state university, not far from it was in Pennsylvania, not far from Philadelphia, to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. And I went for business, just a generic business thing, and I hated it. And it was about after the first year, I kind of decided that I did not want to do it. And I remember specifically sitting down with my parents, having a conversation about not wanting to waste their money going to college if it's not something I really want to do. I think in that moment they asked, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I think it'd been kind of inside of me for a while. And I finally just said, "I think I want to try acting." And one of my parents was just immediately, it was like, "That's ridiculous. That's,
Ah,
wait, get your college degree and then you can decide what you want to do." And my other parent was like, "Okay, well, let's talk about that and what would it entail." And ultimately they both were very supportive. And
mm,
I dropped out of college and got involved with a theater company in Philadelphia. I started doing plays and studying, and that kind of gave me the bug right there. That was the defining moment. As far as inspirations, man, there were so many. I mean, I was watched a lot of TV. Um, I remember Taxi. Taxi was a great show. Brady Bunch. I watched a lot of those classic '70s TV shows, and but it was really fun. Movies. I love to go to the movie theater. Movies. As I think back to when I got into directing and just images and visual storytelling, which kind of informed my directing as I got into that. I remember seeing in school our English teacher showed us a short film, The Red Balloon, and there was no dialogue in this film. It was about this young boy in Paris, and I was just really struck by it, and it was really it hit me in a way that I didn't realize kind of laid the groundwork for my love of film.
I'll have to look. Right. And then
Yeah, it's pretty dated, so it's
is
it's
it
uh, it's black and white, by this filmmaker, well known filmmaker, and it won Academy Award, won all kinds of awards. But it was really a perfect kind of short story that takes you on this journey of this boy's kind of dreams, and it was really cool.
oh fitting for yeah. And then how when you first started, how did you like really get over like the nerves and like have like just like to put yourself out there and how did you overcome any of that?
It was I think you just have to do it. It's terrifying. When I did a lot of stage work in theater, and then when I moved to New York and started getting in front of the camera, it was exciting. I really was excited by the whole prospect of it, and it just felt good, but it was terrifying. And just preparation, a lot of preparation, confidence in what I was doing, and trying to stay committed to, what I learned in acting class, and watching, people who are really good at doing it. And it's a step-by-step process. It started with one line and then two lines or whatever, but just, yeah, I could hear the nerve. You see those early things. I hear the nerves in my voice, and I'm like, oh, it's tough to watch.
Rewind, fast forward. And if you would have to like start over today, what would be like your first advice or first steps, do you think, like getting into the industry?
Well, it's very different than when I started. There's so much. I mean, I eventually got there, but I think, I don't have any regrets as to what my path and what my journey was. I feel I've been very, very lucky and very blessed with that. But, the advice would be is to really solidify your foundation, and what you as an actor really don't focus on those other things that can be distractions. Really learn the craft. If you can learn the craft as your foundation. I did a 2-year program in New York, acting with one of the top acting teachers in the country, and that was the best investment, the best time spent learning the craft and really understanding acting and exploring kind of what an actor has to do and go through in developing a character and fitting into a story.
Yeah, I feel like I really like kind of want to get into writing TV shows, like my own How to Get Away with Murder, like, or something, or even like interviewing. I feel like I've like kind of been obsessed with it since I started this, but
And
kind of,
that's part of it. I mean, you have
yeah.
that exactly. That's, something speaks to you. You're clearly very passionate. Everything I've seen uh, about you about that is, and you have to follow that passion, and that comes with that commitment to saying, this is what I want to do. And those things start, I believe, they start lining up and appearing in your path. And then it's just which path do you take. But you have to be committed, and you have to go full on, and just be completely committed to what it is you want. Because if you're not fully committed, it makes it just practically impossible.
Yeah, I feel like I got to work on the nerve, or just go full force at it and
But
not
that's
worry
okay.
about
That's
what
part of
people
it,
think.
and
Yeah.
accept it. Accept that nerves are going to be a part of it, but and don't try to tell yourself you're not nervous. You can say, okay, I'm nervous. So what now? What? And then
Yeah.
try to move past it. But that's just a nature. I still get nervous. I get nervous every time I show up on set. Now, and that's there's gradations of that depending upon what's required or expected from me, but whether I'm acting or directing. But that I hope never goes away. I kind of like that. It's what feeds.
The rush.
It
Yeah.
feeds that sort of. It's the rush of that, and that sort of, that kid who has that idealistic um, view on what they want to do.
Yeah, I gotta. And then I was wondering if you could talk about landing your first TV role and being on like a first set and all that for All My Children, I think it
Yeah,
was.
well, All My Children was the first. That was when I had the first lines I had on television, which got me my SAG card. So it was a couple of different soap operas. It was All My Children was kind of the first recurring character. I was on a few episodes. It was actually the first one I think I got was on Another World. And it was a scene with Julianne Moore, believe it or not. She was playing a dual character, twin sisters or twin cousins or something. Um, and she was really terrific, because she was, obviously she was well known on that show, but I had like 2 lines and I was very nervous. But yeah, I was kind of in New York, waiting tables, taking acting classes, and just getting myself out there. There was a big time when you sent out your picture and resume and tried to get indoors in all kinds of places. And I got an opportunity and jumped in, and that started the ball rolling. All My Children was kind of a couple of episodes, so that kind of started started everything. And then, that led to Die Hard 2. And then I got cast in Die Hard 2. And that was a rush because there was this big, Hollywood action film. And that I went out to Los Angeles to film that when I was living in New York. And that was really cool, so I had some pretty cool early gigs.
Die Hard. Do you consider Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I do.
Ah,
I think it's a Christmas movie. Yeah, I know that's a big controversy,
right.
and but every Christmas people are like, I want to watch Die Hard too. So it's certainly not It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
It's probably not as dark as It's a Wonderful Life, oddly enough. But no, but I think just because it's time and place and what everyone does for traveling, there is that kind of that setup of what we all go through during the holidays.
Controversy. And then around the early 2000s is when you kind of began directing and making the next steps into that. And I was wondering how you kind of decided to switch it up and try something.
I think I'd been acting for a while and getting a good amount of work, but it was I think I'd always been thinking about directing. I directed some theater in New York. But I think being an actor on series television and watching a lot of directors, I was really kind of intrigued by that, and it kind of really pulled me in as to that element and how to sort of, apart from just what an actor goes through in the part, what would be the person who sort of makes all those decisions to tell the entirety of the story, not just my character's arc. So I think that kind of started it for me, and then I got into a couple of film courses in Los Angeles and learned a little bit more about the technical. Made a couple of short films, and then I was given the opportunity, not given, but I kind of worked very hard because they wouldn't give it to me. I was acting on a show called American Dreams, and it was I did a short film that I presented to the producers, to which they really liked, and they said they'd give me an episode to do. So that was my first kind of break in television, was directing on American Dreams, and I did a couple of episodes there, and then that's kind of a start, and I got bit with that bug and really enjoyed it and kind of pursued that path.
And starting maybe like directing one show and then going to another, how do you like set up like the shot list or like the locations, and do you like
well, it's a process that early in your career as a director, you are kind of the guest director, so you're doing a lot of different shows, and that really taught me a lot. It gave me a lot of tools for my toolbox, and really learn to work in other people's worlds and sandboxes. And so my process approaching as a director is pretty methodical in how I approach to it. What I asking most of my first few days are asking a lot of questions to really get a full understanding of what do they want out of the script? What do they want out of this particular episode? I will have done my homework at that point and watched all the episodes to really know the characters and know the kind of the machine of what that show is. But yeah, then it's just preparation. It's all preparation. So by the time I show up on set, I have my shot list. I know exactly what I want. It'll be working with the director of photography and my first AD, and just collaborating. How do we make this day, and what do we want? What are my aspirations? But being very clear about those things, because that'll get me a couple more setups the more prepared that I am.
Yeah. And then do you also usually do the same like steps for every show, or is it kind of?
It's different because there's different needs. I mean, yeah, there's a core of how I approach it that is similar, because I think it's just that's the design. The design is really kind of immersing yourself into that world and learning everything about that, learning the language of that show. But there's different some shows might be more VFX heavy, or require more more studying, historical references if it's a period piece, or yeah. So it's really just kind of learning what that show is about, but the approach is the same every time. Yeah.
It's cool to like think of, like, usually when we're just watching it on TV, we're just like ready for the story and then continuing that. But it's like cool to think about all the behind the, like, how much work.
Well, there's a lot that's in it,
Yeah.
and it kind of in some respects it's as exciting as it is to be part of that storytelling and to have all those elements at your disposal as you try to figure out, and then the challenges that you face day in day out of never enough time to get all the scenes and shots that you want to. It does kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on the magic of it. So and there is a little bit of lamenting of just when you see the final product,
Regrets
how
are
everything
different.
it's all there, but I carry the baggage of, oh, this day was impossible, or we didn't have this, I didn't have that prop, or that location didn't work out, the weather wasn't like I wanted. There's any number of things that can go wrong, but again, that's stuff that I'm carrying in my mind, but not to the viewer. If we do our job right, the viewer they go along for the journey of that story.
Different, or regrets, or different shots you could, or yeah.
There's always something like, I wish I would have gotten that one, or I wish I would have done this, or
next time. You mentioned sandboxes and stuff, and I was wondering if you could talk about the Shondaland sandbox and how you got introduced to that world. And Grey's you were.
Yeah, Grey's Anatomy was the my first foray into that world, and I directed an episode in season 3, and it just went really well. I think there was a real connection as to what her style of writing and what was on the page and to how I visualized that, and it came through pretty early on. As soon as I turned in my first episode, they asked me back right away, and I ended up directing 2 episodes a season as I was doing other shows as well. I always came back and did 2 episodes up through season 8, I think it was. So that started kind of my relationship with Shonda and Betsy Beers and Pete Nowak. I still remember Pete Nowak's first day on set as a junior writer on Grey's Anatomy when he first came. When I was directing, when he was covering us, that's where we first met. And then it went on to Private Practice, and eventually Scandal. And Scandal kind of took it to another level. That's I was asked to be a producing director, so that was a little bit more full-time, more of a commitment. And then, here I am now, full on and heavily involved.
Just was Scandal, when did you guys realize like Scandal was like such a phenomenon?
It didn't. I think there was, there was an order for 7 episodes for the first season, and I think there was a little bit of a letdown because I think there was expectations for more episodes, and I was not involved from the beginning. I came in and did episode 6, which kind of became the kind of genesis for the show, and certainly the relationship between Fitz and Olivia. So it was a heavy episode between Tony and Carrie's characters, and we worked. It was basically their courtship and how they came together, and it just turned out to be a fantastic episode. It was one that a lot of people talked about. And that, I think, once that kind of hit, we felt that we had something. And then when it got picked up for next season, that's when I came aboard full time and really. It was a real family. It was the actors, the crew, the writers. It was really it was a real tight knit group, and we just all felt it right away. Everyone loved it. There was such a respect for everyone's work and a real commitment to kind of bringing the fullest potential out of the work, and that was really that kind of took it to another level. Yeah.
Scandals everywhere. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, and Twitter, it was like the Twitter,
They
Twitter
started
kind of, I
that
think
whole
Twitter kind of made that show. I think that solidified the live tweeting for
yeah.
that show. Terry was fantastic. She was kind of the ambassador of leading the charge for everyone getting on Twitter. That's when I got on Twitter. I was not involved with social media at all until the
Peeping
whole
Toms
cast.
and stuff.
Yeah,
Your little
exactly.
any favorite episodes from Scandal or scenes or
There's so many of them, but the one that sticks out. I mean, the original one, which is Trail, which is episode 6 in season 1. That was kind of what started it all. But there was an episode I directed called Run, which was when Olivia Pope was kidnapped and she was trapped in that hallway, and that kind of it was a very different episode because we'd done the conceit of the show was a very was all kind of usually similar around the West Wing, and this one was very different. So it really, Carrie and I kind of really went through a journey with what that character went through and pulling off what that was. It was a very emotional and pretty powerful episode to do.
I remember when she's getting the newspaper and
Yeah.
where's Olivia? Or that was different. I think I always remember the scene with Olivia's mom when she's biting her wrist
Oh yeah.
to
Yeah.
get or something. I was like, I always remember that for some reason.
Her mother was real crazy. Yeah. And yeah, pretty dysfunctional relationship that was. Yeah.
Or the chair, I think, with Olivia. I
Oh,
think
the chair was another one.
the
Yeah.
chair,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When she picked it up, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's moments of moments of passion and violence. Yes.
And any sort of challenges throughout or in Scandal that you really remembered being?
Um, I think it was just the. I mean, there were always challenges. I think always trying to find locations in Los Angeles that doubled for DC,
Mm,
since that's where the world took place. That was probably the biggest challenge were those to really kind of inhabit that world and make people believe that we were in DC, which a lot of people thought we did shoot there. So that's a testament to doing that. But yeah, that was probably the biggest challenge. But the cast was amazing, and it was really and sometimes there were other challenges. We'd sometimes get scripts last minute, and that put everyone on edge. But it really kind of created this energy and this dynamic of, oh my God, what's going to happen? How's this going to go? So there was a palpability sometimes to those days when we got stuff last minute.
Is it hard working on a show for such a long time and then having it wrap up and not see the same people every day? And
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten used to it because it's kind of, the nature of our business is we are gypsies. At the end of the day, we're traveling circuses, and we go from town to town or show to show. So it's kind of you kind of sign up for that, but when you go that long with a show, it is tougher to walk away, especially when you have a great experience. It's not always a great experience, and it's easier to walk away from some other shows. But that was a tough one to walk through because it was we had something special, and we all got along really well. So we still stay in touch. The actors they're very tight, and they all stay in touch. But there's either events or whenever Bellamy was just in London here recently, and we got together, and I saw Tony in New York, and so it's I ran into Carrie, and I flew on a plane back from London to LA on one leg, and it's whenever we find we will reach out to one another, and there's a Scandal family. Scandal family is a real thing, and
group chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I accidentally bumped something with my foot real quick. I was gonna fix it real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I have like a whole like TGIT like wine glass set and popcorn Scandal popcorn bucket. Okay, it's fixed. Ah,
Oh,
sorry.
that's
Um,
all right.
and then I was wondering if you we could talk about a little show called Bridgerton really quick
Mm-hmm.
before we get into murder.
Way. Yes. So Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte. Bridget when Shondaland went to Netflix, um, Bridgerton was pretty much right on one of their first projects that they had in the pipeline.
Hmm.
And I, Shonda had asked me to direct a block from first season, and I thought it would be really kind of cool to do something very different.
Yeah.
A period piece in England about on a romance novel. It was a world I knew nothing about. Actors I didn't know at all, crew I didn't know at all. So you talk about nerves. There was a bit of nerves in that, but there was also something very exciting about doing something very new and very different than what I'm used to, and that's ultimately is what we. I like to be challenged as an artist is to really kind of do something very different. So I came to London and did it, and it turned out to be a phenomenal experience and felt very good about it. And obviously, it hit, and people kind of liked it.
Ah, biggest Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God.
But it was a great, then Queen Charlotte. It was one of the spinoffs, and having much more of a hand in having directed all those episodes was it was still kind of part of that world, but it had its own thing because we allow new cast members but it's been thoroughly enjoyable meeting a whole new crop of actors and crew and how
Locations.
this works over here. I mean, these locations were just, yeah, that's something that you
No
don't find
green
in America.
screen ceilings or
Very few,
art
yeah. There's no green
lights.
screen ceilings. Yeah, it's all you pretty much walk into a space and you can point the camera straight up in the air and you're going to get something amazing.
Was it hard going from like a political sort of with Scandal and then, like you said, a period like historical?
It No, it wasn't hard. Again, it was exciting, and it's just it's what we do as directors or actors when you do your research. Is as soon as you know you got a job, I immerse myself in the world, just in first in the script and what the requirements are, but really, into the time period and what were people like then, and what was the style, what was the before I start sort of approaching how I want to do this, I'll really trying to get educated as much as I can and get all those things in my toolbox so that I can speak to the period and to what's happening. And then, as we approach how we want to tell it, it becomes a whole, it takes on a life of its own.
And then was there any like with Bridgerton season 1 and then season 2, like with the Netflix records and all that, was there any pressure
Oh yeah.
doing the
Yeah.
prequel like and
I mean, I think there's just pressure that everyone's going to do. You can't approach it differently. You have to sort of approach. I think there was a lot of uncertainty as to, since Phoebe and Reggae were really their characters were at the forefront of that first season, to the mechanism of saying it's going to focus on a new couple every season. Everyone kind of knew about, but I think there was a lot of nerves as to what if they don't want to come back? What if they only want to watch these two people? But we're very confident in our approach and the story that we were telling and what the conceit of the show is and what we were doing. And then, obviously when it came out, people just they didn't have a problem. They kept it, and even more people watched it.
and season 3 and 4 are already.
Yeah, season 3 we're finished. That's in the can, and we're in the post process of that. And then 4 we're going to be, once the writer's strike gets resolved, we'll be up and running with that, and looking forward to that as well. And a lot of really exciting, kind of focusing on those new relationships and different parts of the story does give it a freshness. And amidst the world that everyone loves, but really kind of diving into whose story it is and their journey, how do they get there,
And I think they just announced, or they showed who the season 3 is going to be centered about with
Yeah, with Penelope and Colin,
yeah.
so Nicola and Luke. So there, some first images they just released.
I like how
So
it's like
I think they're they've kind of been there all along. It's kind of been bubbling. They've been waiting. There's been little moments of attraction. So I think fans are really going to like where we go with their relationship.
And I like how Shonda and Julie, is her name Julia, the author, I think.
Julia Quinn, yeah.
Yeah, I like how they did the whole book, like
which is
how they did that. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was it was great. I mean, and that's it's kind of reimagining things in a different kind of reverse order for that, but it worked out. It's it was kind of a very different concept, but it worked out.
Leave it to Shonda to do the different books.
She's a trendsetter. She's a pioneer. Yep.
And how do you think the Shonda shows have such a lasting impact on people and stick with people? And
it just really taps into, I think she just taps into what people will respond to, but it's the way in which she crafts the stories, I think, ultimately, that either change up the predictability or the characters aren't so squeaky clean. They're flawed, they're messy, they're as evidenced certainly with Annalise Keating. There's a lot of I think people are kind of surprised at the depths of where some of the characters and decisions that they make, and I think that's and it's not just for shock value. I think it's really kind of crafted and rooted in sort of a real journey, and it just taps into I think what people really enjoy seeing, whether they see themselves represented in shows that they traditionally haven't, or just the real kind of heart of that human connection.
Well said. Yeah, I think a good example would Annalise with her alcoholism and how many times she kind of went back to it, and it wasn't a straight line of sobriety for I feel like that's
it wasn't like a 4-episode arc in the middle of the second season that came and went. It was something that is very real, because in life that is a very real thing that people struggle with, and may do well at certain points and fall off, and whatever any numerous vices that people do. It's not just alcohol. It could be any number of things.
And what Annalise was going through, so we can't blame her.
Yeah, a little some pressure, some challenges she had.
Oh my god. I think I'm ready. If you want to jump into that little show.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. Okay. I was wondering if we could start off with I think it was Linda Lowey's idea that you play the part of Sam, and how that Shonda came to your office or something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was working. We were in the same building where the writers were, Shonda's offices, and where the very beginning of the preparations for the pilot for How to Get Away with Murder, where's one floor that separated the two, but we were all housed in the same offices at Sunset Gower, and they were preparing to do the pilot, part of which was going to be shot in Philadelphia and Summit. They were really focusing on a lot of the characters, the kids, and once Viola came on board, I think I remember a phone call from Linda Lowy calling and asking me about a couple of different actors who could play Viola Davis's husband, and I was amidst doing Scandal and preparing to do the season finale. I think it was season 3 finale of Scandal, and it was a big episode, and my head was really in that. but these, Linda we dealt with because she cast Scandal as well as How to Get Away. And I kind of gave my opinion on certain actors who I thought might be right, or I said, wow, because I didn't know anything about it. I said, well, what's the character? And I said, well, it's a really, going to be challenging to find somebody who can play her husband and do that. And it went away. And I just kind of offered that up. And then, it was like a week later, I was, heavily into prep for directing on Scandal, and Shonda suddenly comes and knocks on my door and closes the door and says, I need that. And I was like, oh, am I getting fired? What's going on?
Close the door.
Because that's what I thought. She closed the door, and I was like, uh-oh. And she said, we'd like you to play Viola Davis's husband in How to Get Away with Murder. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, and I was literally just blown away. I'm like, my head further from acting at that point, because I was directing and executive producing Scandal. And I said, well, I immediately said I would be honored to play this, but what's the part? I haven't read it. I knew nothing about the show. And I said, well, let me read it. I said, is it even possible with me doing, directing every day? I don't know how this is going to work. She goes, don't worry about that. Just read it and let me know if you want to do it. And it's only going to be in the first episode in the pilot, and then there might be like a 1 or 2 flashbacks.
Okay.
I said, okay. I said, all right, well, let me read it. And of course I read it right away. And I said, look, if we can make it work, this would be phenomenal. I mean, this is to play opposite one of our greatest actors in America. And I love the script, and Pete Nowak, who I worked with before. I love Pete, and just everyone. I mean, they were family. Everyone was family. So I felt honored that they thought of me for this and they trusted me on it. Then, so I agreed to do it, and then became the work of trying to logistically how to figure out what became one of the most busiest periods of my time ever in this industry working. I think I worked 16 straight days on weekends because I flew back to Philadelphia to film the pilot How to Get Away with Murder, and then flew back to Burbank and was filming on a tarmac, on Scandal. So it was absolute mayhem, and one of the most challenging, artistically, one of the most challenging times I've ever been through. But it was exhilarating. It was great.
Would you do that again? That whole, like, if you had to act?
I probably would not choose to do it, but if the situation came up and it was the right situation, and if it was Viola again, hell yeah, I would do that in a second.
Could you say any of the other names you were thinking of for her?
I don't recall who they were. If I did, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't want to out any of that. That was in confidence.
That's funny. She said the pilot episode and then a couple flashbacks, and
yeah,
that's
yeah, no, and it was like I said, it was in talking with Pete and trying to get into his head as what this character is, and there was a lot of unknowns. He said, look, there's a lot of layers to this thing. I'm not sure where a lot of it's going to go yet, but this is because I'm just trying to figure out what's their relationship. We clearly jump in at a crisis point in their relationship, but where did they come from? So trying to get as much, as I told you before, immerse myself into what's the blueprint of where they come from or where they're at, and all I remember is because it happened so quickly. I'm on a plane to Philadelphia, and on a Saturday morning, I had to get up early and meet the customer at a local suit shop to get fitted for suits to wear for a scene that I'm playing that night.
Okay.
And hadn't met any cast members and I remember the first day of filming was the next morning, and it was like 6 a.m. I get in a van, and that's when I meet Viola. She gets in the van. We don't, I'm not sure she knew that I was playing the part yet. She probably just saw me. So we had this in the dark, and then Asia gets in, and the three of us, it was me, Asia, and Viola,
Uh,
riding to set at this university we were filming at in Philadelphia. Not really talking. I think they were talking because they knew each other. They were sitting next to each other. And then it really wasn't until I think we got in the hair and makeup trailer, and I just said, I'm playing your husband.
no.
And yeah, and then
Uh,
we filmed. I think the first scene we filmed was in the university when I was standing there. I think that's the first reveal of who Sam was, and I was talking with
oh yeah.
the
This,
5 kids there, and she comes walking up, and that's when they learn, oh my God, you're married to him. That was the first scene we filmed. Yeah.
oh, and Wes is like, oh, but I saw you with Nate, and yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit. What was your reaction when you read the ending with Sam being the dead body and
Well, I knew it was coming, so that they did say that that it's kind of it's what kicks off the series
that's
is it's his
oh okay.
dead body. So, um, yeah, I mean, I thought it was fun. I was like, oh, this is good. It's I have a pretty quick arc here, and
Yeah.
people like we're gonna come back to this. So you're gonna have to come back a couple times, and you might have to just be dead on the floor on a couple of these scenes. I'm like, that's fine because I'm working, at the next sound stage on Scandal. This will give me some peace and quiet, and I can lay down. I actually fell asleep one time,
Oh, on the
laying
rug.
down. Yeah. Well, not in the rug, not yet, but
Not yet.
on that floor, and I had to always match that position and match the amount of blood. And there was always
Sh-
we had these photographs, and always had to twist myself into this position of exactly where I was, and it was pretty cool.
was the blood like a rubbery sort of
It
thing, or
was
was it
part of it was a rubber mat, but then they obviously had to put real liquid because that's the real interactive part that shines and kicks. And so yeah, I had to always wash. It was a
oh,
pain in the ass to wash that off at the end of each day and put it back on. And I always put back the same shirt, because it had to have the
oh,
same stain.
yeah. Continue. Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember a story you told running back and forth between Scandal and Murder, and you still had the dead looking makeup on,
red
and
makeup.
you had the meeting at Scandal, and everyone was
Yeah.
asking if you were feeling all right. So, like,
Yeah, there was it was very funny because people knew I was going back and forth, and we had to really schedule. As it was turning out, I'd have my meetings midday at Scandal, and I would either work at either first thing up on How to Get Away with Murder or last up on How to Get Away with Murder, so that the normal business day I could do at Scandal, and they worked around that schedule. But it turned out this was the time where I worked first up on How to Get Away with Murder, and I was laying I hadn't gone in to do the work yet. I went through hair and makeup to get ready,
oh,
then went back to the meeting at Scandal, and we're in this production meeting, and everyone's in there, and our location manager was kind of talking about this location. She's looking at me, and she just came over. She goes, "Can I just ask you?" She goes, "Are you feeling okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why? What's the matter?" She goes, you don't look well. You don't look." And I
oh,
said, "Oh no." I said, "This is the makeup I have." She goes, "Oh my gosh." She goes, I was like worried. I thought you were having a heart attack."
oh, oh my God.
It was very funny.
Call the
Good makeup crew.
right. That's a good testament.
Yes.
Oh, oh, we have to talk about the ending to episode 4 and where I got my name for the podcast.
Yes.
With I just remember, I always
That's
remember.
that scene. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I
Go
always
ahead.
remember that. Sorry, I always remember the promo for this episode, and it was like, "You won't believe Viola's last 9 words," and then all week, my
Yeah.
manager at my job at the time, we were like, What is that last 9 words?" And then no one could have probably guessed what the yeah.
I don't think
Well,
anyone would have guessed though. Those were the 9 words. Yeah.
in a
No,
sentence,
when I
yeah.
read it, I laughed out loud when I first read it, and I think it was a great catchphrase. Clearly, it's stuck. But it was Yeah, it was kind of I mean, look, it was a great it certainly had everybody talking that last phrase. And you know, we had to try to keep a straight face whenever when we were shooting it.
Just in the doorway, just
Yeah, and then of course my first question was like, well, how much of this are we really going to see, and
oh.
what are you so what is the plan here?
Did you have to
Uh
take those actual pictures, or is that
I
just
think we
fake?
part of it.
Or,
I think some of it was, but I ultimately I think it might have been somebody else because
oh,
they had to really kind of play with what you can and can't see and how low or how whether it's the midsection of the body. And
yeah,
then there wasn't actually any penis shot in
yeah.
the on the picture, but it was more obviously what she talked about, and you're seeing just glimpses of the body. So yeah, I don't recall whether that was actually me or not.
Hmm. Just iconic. Oh my God, I can't.
Yeah, no, and that scene was pretty. I mean, look, it was a really
And the makeup and
yeah, the
even
powerful scene
the
for her, just kind of taking everything off and how exposed and vulnerable she was in that moment. And yeah, I just remember, you know, Viola's just an absolutely amazing acting partner, and watching her go through that process was really powerful. Um, and I had to of course, play against that because I had no suspicion that there was anything until that moment when she asks me. And then, of course, that launches our relationship into a whole nother level.
oh, a
Uh,
little bit. Oh God, I had to ask. I had to get that. I remember that.
yeah, no, that's no, and I have people coming up to me joking all the time. I mean, I'm still getting stopped here in Europe because I think it's
Oh,
airing here in Europe. So people all, you know, they're coming up. They're like, Sam Keating. It's very funny.
well, why'd you do that?
Yeah,
Uh,
you were so mean to her.
yeah. And then I was wondering if like you could like kind of like do a little step by step of filming the winter finale with them killing Sam and the fight with Viola and over the stairs and the stunt
Yeah,
double
that
and
was um that was I mean that was a very challenging episode to do on many fronts, and just from an acting standpoint. I remember we filmed that because we didn't want any disruption, and we really wanted to film that whole sequence of the fight between Viola and myself. We filmed that on a Sunday, where we knew we wouldn't have any interruptions and distractions with other thing, and really kind of committed to this
ah,
very Virginia Woolf kind of knockdown, drag out fight that started in the bedroom, went down the stairs in the living room, and then ended up in the kitchen, back in the hallway again. But just the emotional investment that it takes and the time it takes to do that. It's an entire day. We wanted that whole fight to be on the same day and not sort of break it up as you normally do with filming. So Viola and I were really kind of in this very intense period that day, going in and out of this fight that ended with me choking her, pinning her up against the wall, and saying some pretty vile things. So there was a real intensity that required us to stay kind of in character and stay separated for a good part of that, except when we were filming. Even though we had, you know, that was first season, you know, through, you know, 20 seasons later, we always had a good time filming and laughed a lot and joked a lot. We didn't early on because I think there was a lot of feeling out of not only the characters and what they were going through, but as actors, we had to sort of learn that trust and as to where we were. So I think that kind of cemented that partnership that she and I had as actors and how we approached it. Then getting into the portion where Michaela throws me over the banister and hitting. You know, that was one take that was done with a stuntman you know, I did it right up to the point we rehearsed all the way through exactly what was going to happen, how the body was going to land, because this was going to set up for the rest of the season, how that was going to happen. So, you know, the how we had to go through the whole process of exactly how I was going over the railing, and at what point. I remember the upstairs bedroom into the hallway to where the stairwell was. That was on one stage, and then the bottom floor was on another stage where you see the top of the stairwell. So it was split up into two different sets. But there was only one take of that stuntman who went over and landed in a cushion. But how it was cut together, I thought it was really extremely well done with the spontaneous moment of something that gets out of control, and Sam trying to hold on to something, and this spur of the moment thing that takes off. So
yeah, it's really good. I was like, wait, is that he didn't really do that when I first.
Yeah, no, but it looks fantastic, and
Yeah.
then you added some sound effects and everything of the body hitting, and it was really really terrifically done.
And just all their reactions when
Yeah,
you're going to Laurel's reaction.
yeah, yeah.
I was okay. I was wondering if
But
we
they're
could just.
terrific. I mean, and they were all
Yeah.
fantastic. As again, because we had to keep going back to film that, from different points of view and different perspectives. So what happened right before that moment, what happened after, and what was happening at the same time. We all had a lot of laps around, rewinding and putting ourselves in that position again. And you have to, I think, because the heavy subject matter,
Yeah.
you need that release in between,
Get depressed. And then how did when they hit you with the trophy, how did the like blood and all that like come out?
Yeah, it was they had a rubber version of that so that they could actually hit, which, they said this is what it's going to feel like. And I'm like, yeah, have at it. It's fine. Um, and I think one time it bounced around a little bit, so they couldn't use that one because it was a rubber one. And then the blood, I mean, I don't remember specifically how it happened. They probably had something rigged where the blood kind of either shot out of it. But, the gash, we had picked a particular point where the gash happened and how the blood kind of came pouring out. With that, it was all very well planned and detailed.
Yeah, it works really good. Just thinking about her reaction. Yeah. I was wondering if we could just go over because Sam comes back a lot, but I was wondering if we could just go over like a couple more parts with Sam and in season 2 with the whole like Mahoney flashback and finding out Annalise was pregnant in the past and the car crash, and I was wondering if you could talk about filming the scene with losing the baby and.
Yeah, that was, again, another tremendously intense and emotional approach to those scenes because of the subject matter. It was really wonderful for Viola and I to sort of see the relationship from a different perspective, a different point of view, and how they kind of came together, and their love for this moment, even if there was pressures that he put on her and she didn't want, the complexities that happen in relationships. But that moment of losing the baby was, it's something you read on paper and you immediately feel, oh my God, it just tears you apart. And then shit, how are we gonna play this? How are we gonna do this? What's that gonna be like? And then you basically have a partner like Viola Davis who can just go to those depths and go to those places to just rip your heart out,
Oh yeah, she did that for sure.
Yeah. And then and then with Charlie, the scene that we had in the hallway of the hospital, I remember that as well.
God, yeah.
With Frank, and that was just heartbreaking. That's what I really liked as playing Sam, is really seeing a side of Sam that we didn't get to see much of, is that vulnerability and that hurt that he has in that moment, and decisions that had to be made at that moment to protect her. It's just such a wonderfully so complex scene about what the audience knows, what they're going through, what the emotions are. It was really powerful, and Charlie was obviously also a tremendous acting partner as well.
Yeah, I think it was in season 6 when you guys have that last little flashback together when or maybe it's when she wants to adopt Wes, and Sam is like, "We lost our son," or
Yeah,
like it's not like really like conveyed that like both of them are grieving and like or like you're not thinking
yeah,
that you're just like thinking for Annalise because
yeah.
yeah, it's like
Protection of her, and yeah, exactly. And look, there's every character has a lot of motives, as has it been so laid out so beautifully, what the intentions are. But yeah, it is about protection and needs.
and then when how they connected Frank being involved with the baby to killing Lila for Sam and you on the payphone
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I remember the
ah
payphone. I mean, no, we didn't know. I remember doing that scene, and I'm asking questions, and they're like, "We don't know exactly." And I'm like, "I don't know how quite to play this. What is it? What does he owe me? What's our history? What's the?" And they didn't have an answer yet. They were still kind of figuring it out. So
oh
we kind of tried it a couple different ways, and I kind of came up with things in my head and as to what it was
my
and how he owes me, and I was not thinking at all that he was my son at
oh
that
god
time because that was knowledge that any of us had.
ah
But it was, yeah, it was, it's one thing we Viola and I laughed about this after I think episode 5 is that what we thought was kind of truth and what was constantly changes.
yeah
So there's a real leap faith in where the writers were going and what we were playing, trying to honor what was the truth at that moment, because that truth at that moment doesn't necessarily mean that's the truth in season 2, 3, and 4,
and 6
and
when we
6.
find
Yeah.
her oh my
Yeah.
that was that was wild
Yeah.
the
Trust me, when
incest
I read it
baby
through, it's like, oh my God.
but they did that incest is best put your brother to the
Mhm.
test and with
Yep.
Marcia and or Hannah Keating
Yeah.
and
My
we're
sister.
oh,
Yeah. Pretty twisted. Yeah.
oh my god I can't when I'm like rewatching I don't really connect it still that like I don't put them together like father or it works like when you think about it but I don't know if I just
Yeah.
block out
Not,
that twist like
yeah,
yeah
we weren't, we certainly were not playing that when we were
yeah
acting together. Yeah.
and Bonnie and the Frank or stopping the whole Frank and
Hmm.
Bonnie thing. Oh, Sam.
Yep.
I was wondering if or when the scandal crossover happened and having those two worlds like running back and forth and then having like from the beginning and then having this crossover happen and
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, I wasn't involved at that point. I was actually, I was, we were launching a new show for the people. So I wasn't around during that
oh,
crossover episode, but speaking with both Carrie and Viola at different points about what was happening. So I was not the one running back and forth at that point. I think the act, Viola and Carrie were. But I think it was kind of cool to have those two worlds kind of cross what we've kind of known, very very different worlds and very tonally different. Well, maybe not so tonally different, um, but that was yeah, I think that was a real treat for the fans and all of us to sort of watch them come together and play off one another.
yeah it was icon oh my god and having
Yeah, it's like yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Cicely Tyson with Kerry
Oh,
Washington and all three that picture they took together and
yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah.
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 I remember the picture you took with them both in front of the green
That
screen
was yeah, green screen at
building,
City
the
Hall. That was
city hall,
down
yeah.
at LA City Hall. That was such a the two of them were they were in a scene together on the steps, and I literally was location scouting for the next episode. So it just
Oh,
happened to be
cool.
we came down and we saw them. We're like, oh my gosh! We went over, we started talking, and all of a sudden, yeah, that picture happened, and
Okay,
yeah,
I was wondering, yeah.
it was pretty cool. It was a little bizarre because here's my wife who's an actor, and then here's the star of Scandal who I've been directing for all this time. The kind of clash of those two worlds was pretty trippy.
Yeah. That's yeah, iconic is the best word for it.
Yeah.
But, oh man. And then season 5 with Gabriel being Sam's son with Vivian and your real life son playing Gabriel in that little flashback, and how did
Yeah.
that all come about and working with your
I was
son?
probably most nervous about that because it was my real son who's not an actor. Pete, Pete called me up and uh, said, hey, this is kind of where the story is going. And Rome, who plays your son, we need the younger version of him because I had this flashback scene that I want to do with you when you first kind of see him.
Uh,
Uh, you know, and I was excited about the prospect of having my son do it, but I was also terrified that, and I even said to Pete, I said, what if he's terrible, Pete? I mean, he's my son and I love him. He's not of this environment. He's never been on a set like this. And he says, no, I'm sure it'll be great. And it'll be, he's not going to have much to do, but he did. And I kind of rehearsed with him a little bit and I really left it up to the director. John Terlesky was the director of this episode. And I said, look, you have to listen to him because if it was me, he wouldn't, he would screw around. And he even told me that when we were doing the scene, it was kind of seeing me serious. He kind of laughed, And I'm like, you can't laugh, man. You can't laugh. It's not funny. So, but he did really well. And then they brought him back again for another episode. I think it was the next season. He came back and did an episode.
with Marsha.
Yeah, with Marsha, who played my
Other one. Excellent.
Yeah. Another relationship that I had, the mother of my child. And he did pretty well with her as well. So that was kind of fun. I feel very privileged to have now something that kind of lives on that my son, who's now taller than me, played, that we have something that's kind of, that marks that moment in his life, just from a personal standpoint, that we got to share together.
Little scrapbook or time capsule sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It is a time capsule. Yeah.
That scene. Yeah, he did good. Then with the basketball and then to Rome with the basketball and he's crying. Oh my God.
We have this picture of the two of them in base outside one of their trailers, the two of them together. And they look like he looks like the younger version of him. It was really kind of remarkable.
Yeah, I remember everyone on Twitter was like, "What? How did they do that?" Or,
yeah.
And then season 6, or with the whole email to Vivian and Frank telling you to delete it, and then in season 6 you go back and actually meet Vivian or hook up with her again, and after the baby. And what was it like exploring even more of
Sam's darker past. Look, it was just really Pete kept throwing things at me that I'm like, really? Really? And but my job is as an actor is to try to find those human elements where people make decisions under extreme circumstances, and they're not always good decisions, as evidenced by the behavior. And he kind of got what was coming to him in the long run about trying to spin all those things. But the commitment to it is there really, I didn't want to play it twirling my mustache as a villain who's kind of calculating and trying to do everything. That's kind of so I really had to dig and find those truthful moments that this was a guy who was tremendously flawed and did not have a way, and kind of dealt with people who were in front of him at that time and really kind of stayed in the moment. And I think meant what he felt in the moment, but was not thinking about sort of if I could have after that,
and then oh shit, Sam. And then
Sam. Yep.
Sam's Club. I remember that little hashtag.
Sam's Club, that's right. Yeah.
Who's joining Sam's Club?
Hashtag Sam's Club. Who's joining me next? Come on, Alfie.
No, don't do that.
Oh, I know.
I can't believe they did that.
I know. Surprised all of us.
That dirty trick out, or how they revealed everyone each week, and you thought Wes was going to
be there. Yeah.
But it was earlier, before the fire. Whatever. It's over.
Yep.
And it's at the beginning of season 3 is when I got the 5 faces of the students right here.
Oh, I didn't know that. Look at that.
It's like the
Oh,
silhouette.
cool.
And then of course that season is when they killed one of them off. So everyone
Yeah, I
was
know that.
joking I
You
should
got to
get a
either erase
X.
it or put something over
I
it.
was
Oh
like,
yeah,
of
just
course.
one line through it as as they each go.
A red sharp and then Asher. Damn it. Oh,
Uh-huh.
man. And then another kind of heartbreaking scene was when you guys get the ashes of baby Sam
Yeah.
back,
Hmm.
and then that final sort of fight flashback, and then I remember Sam was all I want to do is love you to Annalise, and just
Yeah.
one final
Yeah, I think that's what, again, I think that's what, from my standpoint, again, there was a lot in that episode, and a lot of pain. I mean, this is just their whole foundation. We really tried to imbue that there was a real connection, a real love at some point. You rarely ever saw it, but I think we have to sort of have had that sort of foundation somewhere, so that pain comes from a real place and it's not just sort of anger or hurt for the hell of it.
yeah.
Um, so I think that's there was a real wanting to protect, just a real horrible way about going about it, but a real genuineness, again, finding the genuineness in that care and concern and protection. That was real to me. That has to be real. That's what takes you on that journey of the complexities of that. As much as everyone will say he's a scumbag and he deserved what he got, and rightfully so, but there has to be, it's not, to me, it's not always cut and dry, and it's not interesting if it's just sort of one note.
And they even had the episode, the title, "What if Sam wasn't the bad guy this whole
Yeah.
time or all along?"
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he even says to
And I'm like,
Annalise,
finally, vindication, finally.
season 613, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody already went down the road.
And he even admits to Annalise that he's broken. Like he just
Yep.
comes out and like admits it, that he knows that he's messed up. And
Yep.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, which I thought was good. I thought it was nice to sort of, and I know there were some people who were angry, like, why are they making us, feel it? But I think it's just, again, once you see, when you play with the timeline of that, you're not starting this relationship from the beginning and seeing where it goes. What I thought was really lovely about this show is that they introduced different parts of that timeline so that you have to piece together. And, you do see that, in a very real relationship, stuff that you go through, and admission of that was I thought it was really great that he allowed the character to have that kind of admission.
And like you said, like the out of order of the relationship, they had that in season 3 when Annalise is suspended from practicing law, and she's like stuck in the house, and she's like remembering all the flashbacks of you two like moving in and unpacking the house, and like you really see
Happier times. Yeah. And it was weird because I remember Viola and I were like, wow, this is so strange. It's like we're playing two different characters now, because that hasn't been at all the setup of this relationship, because we jump in obviously in crisis mode. But it was really cool. It was cool to kind of go back and have that sort of those moments of connection and love, and those first moments of clicking and getting on.
I miss the show.
I know. Well, it was a good show. It was a really great group.
And what would you say or maybe working with the group, but what would be your biggest takeaway from working on the show and playing Sam? And
I mean, it was a really wonderfully rich character. So from an acting standpoint, I no idea that 1 or 2 episodes was going to turn into 6 seasons of 20 something episodes. Yeah, so and that it would turn into that, or that that I would keep getting a call and saying, "Hey, we got something." I mean, I really thought I didn't know how he could play out more to it, but I think the writers just did masterfully in how they they kind of played with that order and flashbacks and intertwined all those very that web of all these relationships and what their connection was to one another. So yeah, my takeaway is just, it was just absolutely exhilarating. I mean, I you know, my expectations were very limited, and where it went was really quite fulfilling, and you know, friendships that I came away with from that, and you know, and again, working with Viola, who was primarily my work with, she was just a tremendous partner for the 6 seasons that we got to play together.
Yeah, you guys were really good together. Oh, and did you get to take anything from your little each set visits, or
Yeah,
one?
everyone talks about that. I think I did. What did I take from that? I know I have something from that.
The blood splatter or the pool?
No, I wanted to take the
Uh,
blood splatter, but I didn't get it. God, you know, oh, that's a good question. And there was something that I know I have. I'm trying to think. Was it? I
Trophy?
don't think I have the letter, not on the trophy.
Uh,
That's, I think Shonda has that.
uh,
Uh, I think it was a couple of letters. Yeah, I know I wanted. I would have loved Lady Justice that took me out.
frame it,
But
or put
yeah,
it in a
no, it
box.
was.
Blast.
I'm not sure. I can't recall. I'd have to sort of think on what I have, because it's been a while since I have. But I usually have some sort of memento that I take with me.
Uh, well, I already kind of went over the time, so I won't keep you any longer.
Well, this is
But
an absolute pleasure. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad
uh,
we finally got to do it and spend time. And I so appreciate your passion for the show, and your you know, your knowledge of the show is incredibly impressive. Uh,
23
and
episodes.
I wish you luck on your writing ventures. You know, you can write How to Get Away with Murder 2 at some point.
Maybe like a Tegan Price spinoff or something. If
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah. And the characters can kind of come back in different time periods, and you
like
know,
a Breaking Bad sort of,
there
Better
you
Call
go.
Saul sort of stuff.
You're already on it. You know,
Right.
write it, do it. Yeah.
I have like a clipboard of like a pinpoint, like with strings going to every or how I would connect it, and maybe
Hmm.
with Laurel and her dad. And I kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, I just need to get over the nerves and jump in.
Push to those nerves, Niles. Just do it. Yep.
Uh, well, thank you again for always staying in contact with me, and doing the interview and being a part of my favorite show. And
Oh, you got it, man. I'm glad to have done it. Glad we can finally do this. And thanks for having me on. Good luck with it.
of course, yeah. Thank you.